The rain began as a whisper against the tent fabric, a soft percussion that came almost too gently to notice. You lay there, half awake, listening as each drop landed and rolled away, merging with 100 others in the darkness outside. The river was only a few yards from your campsite, its steady murmur blending with the growing patter of rain until it was hard to tell where the water ended and the sky began. The air inside the tent carried the faint scent of damp earth and pine needles, mingling with the lingering smokiness from the campfire you'd extinguished hours earlier. It felt like the world had wrapped itself in a blanket of sound, warm and close, yet wild and untamed. The small lantern cast a golden pool of light across the tent walls, making the rain's silver shadows dance in slow, unpredictable patterns. Your sleeping bag was snug and warm around you, but the fabric of the tent occasionally rippled from the wind, sending a chill through your senses. The canvas smelled faintly of waterproofing wax, a smell that, strangely, you associated with safety. Beyond the tent, somewhere in the dark, a branch cracked, the sound sharp and brief, a reminder that even in this cocoon of comfort, the forest was alive and awake. You told yourself it was only the wind. Still, your heartbeat slowed only after a long moment, soothed again by the rain's rhythmic touch. Earlier that evening, the riverbank had been a place of laughter and simple work, collecting kindling, setting stones for the fire ring, tightening tent lines against the forecast. You had walked barefoot on the damp grass by the river's edge, feeling the cold water rush over your toes. Now, lying in the tent, you could still picture the way the twilight had painted the water in streaks of deep blue and molten silver, as if the river were carrying the very last light of the day away. That memory warmed you almost as much as the sleeping bag did. The sudden gust of wind rattled the tent poles, and the rain picked up, going from gentle taps to a lively drumming. You adjusted your pillow, pulling it closer to the lantern's light, and glanced at your small journal resting by your side. You thought about writing, but the urge to simply listen was stronger. It felt rare to be this still, to let the world outside set the pace, to give yourself permission to drift between thought and dream. Your eyelids grew heavier, yet each sound outside seemed to etch itself into memory, making you wonder if you would remember this exact night years from now. Then, from somewhere upriver, there came another sound, faint but distinct, like a splash followed by the low murmur of movement in the water. It didn't sound like rain hitting the river's surface. It was slower, deliberate. You held your breath, listening more intently, but the rain seemed determined to hide the source. Perhaps it was a fish. Perhaps it was something else. Either way, the sound lingered in your mind as the lantern's glow dimmed with the draining battery, and the forest closed in just a little more around your fragile pocket of warmth. Jonah insisted the footprints must have been ours. He said maybe we'd tracked the mud inside when we panicked. But there was a pattern to them, a slow, deliberate trail, almost too precise to be human. Each print was a perfect outline, toes slightly splayed, as if whoever made them had been barefoot. We checked every inch of the floor for damp spots or new prints, but they just ended abruptly in the middle of the living room, near the rug. When we lifted the rug, there was a hatch. I remembered my uncle mentioning something about a storm cellar when he'd loaned us the cabin. I hadn't thought twice about it then. Carter pulled the latch, but the hinges didn't budge. They were rusted shut. Still, when the next thunderclap hit, all of us swore we heard something knocking from beneath the floorboards. 3 soft knocks, deliberate, evenly spaced. Then silence that we didn't open it that day. The power went out again, and the cold crept in fast. The air smelled faintly metallic, like wet iron. Lily kept pacing, muttering that she felt watched. Carter tried to reassure her, but he couldn't stop glancing toward the floor himself. That night, when the lantern dimmed to a flicker, we heard it again, the knocks, slow and rhythmic. But this time, they were joined by a dragging sound, like nails scraping wood from beneath us. Jonah finally snapped. He grabbed the hatchet from beside the door and said, "Whatever's down there, I'm ending this now." We tried to stop him, but the knocking grew louder, angrier, until the boards themselves began to tremble. The moment Jonah swung the hatchet into the hatch, every window in the cabin shattered inward at once. The wind howled through like a scream, and the lantern went out completely to eye in the darkness. I could hear Jonah breathing hard, his footsteps moving toward the hatch again. Then a thud, Something heavy fell. When I turned on my phone's flashlight, Jonah was lying still beside the open hatch, eyes wide. His pulse was faint, but he was alive. The hatch was open, revealing only a pitch-black void and the smell of wet earth. But there was one more thing, faintly visible in the beam of light, a set of handprints, pressed into the dirt walls, reaching upward. We carried Jonah to the couch and tried to wake him. His lips were pale, his breathing shallow. It was like the air itself had been sucked out of him. Carter said we needed to get him to a hospital, but the road was still a river of mud and debris. The storm hadn't stopped once. It was as if the sky had forgotten how to clear. When lightning hit a nearby tree and split it clean in half, the flash lit up the cellar opening. Something glistened down there, a faint shimmer, like water reflecting light. But it wasn't water that I climbed down first, flashlight trembling in my hand. The walls were close, damp, and covered in scratches. The air grew colder with every step. At the bottom, there was a small concrete room, unfinished, claustrophobic. I found what had been shining, a piece of glass embedded in the wall, like part of an old mirror. When I leaned close, I saw my own reflection, except I wasn't alone in it. There was someone behind me. A woman. She had hollow eyes and water dripping from her hair. Her lips didn't move, but I heard her voice clearly, as if it were inside my skull. You shouldn't have opened it. I stumbled back, my light shaking. But the reflection didn't change. She was still there, standing behind me, even though the room was empty. Then the mirror cracked, not from the middle, but from her reflection's fingertips pressing outward. When I scrambled up the ladder, Carter grabbed my arm. "What did you see down there?" he demanded, his voice trembling. Before I could answer, we both heard it, a woman's voice whispering softly through the rain, repeating the same words. "You shouldn't have opened it." Lily screamed, pointing toward the window. Outside, in the flashing lightning, we saw her, the same soaked figure, standing motionless among the trees. The whispers didn't stop. They merged with the sound of rain, a whispering current weaving through the thunder. That night, none of us dared sleep. Jonah woke briefly, muttering incoherently, repeating something about the mirror and a deal she made. He tried to grab my wrist, but his hand was ice cold. Then he went limp again. By dawn, the whispers had grown louder, turning into full words, names. Ours. She was saying our names one by one, her voice dripping with rain and static. When I turned on the radio again, it came through there too. "Leave him," it said. "The one you saved is already gone." Jonah's condition worsened by the hour. His eyes stayed open, glassy and unfocused. His skin had gone pale and damp, almost like it was absorbing the moisture from the air. Carter and I argued over what to do. I wanted to leave him, find help, but Lily refused. She said the woman's voice was following us because we'd broken some kind of boundary, and abandoning him would make it worse. The rain outside had become relentless, slamming the windows like fists. The storm wasn't just weather anymore. It felt sentient. At some point, Carter disappeared. One minute he was checking the generator out back, the next he was gone. We searched everywhere, calling his name, but the only thing that answered was the static. Then, through the wall of rain, we saw him, or what looked like him. He was standing in the yard, clothes soaked, staring up at the sky with his mouth open, letting the rain pour in as if drinking it. I ran out, screaming his name, but when I reached him, it wasn't Carter anymore. His eyes were hollow pits filled with dark water. His skin rippled like the surface of a pond. Then he fell apart, literally, collapsing into a puddle that washed away into the mud that we ran back inside, drenched and shaking. The floor was slick with water, dripping from the ceiling, though there were no leaks. The cabin itself was sweating. Every wall felt alive, pulsing faintly in time with the thunder. The whispers had turned into full sentences now, echoing in overlapping voices. They spoke of the rain, of how it remembered faces, how it never forgets who opens the gate. Lily sat trembling, clutching Jonah's hand. "It's not a storm," she said quietly. "It's her. It's all her." By nightfall, the line between rain and darkness had vanished. Water dripped upward, sideways, even from the air itself. I realized then what the footprints had meant. They weren't from someone entering. They were from someone leaving. Something had escaped from beneath the house. Something the rain had been keeping buried. That night, I heard a new sound beneath the thunder, a heartbeat, deep and slow, pulsing from the floor. The storm wasn't stopping. It wasn't meant to. And for the first time, I understood what Jonah had whispered before passing out. The rain isn't falling, it's rising. I'm not sure when I stopped feeling afraid and started feeling numb. The rain had gone on for what felt like days, though the clock on the wall never moved. Time had dissolved into a constant gray rhythm of thunder and heartbeat. Lily was the last one left with me. Jonah hadn't woken again, and by morning, his body had turned cold and slick like the rest. When I tried to move him, his skin slid under my hands. Not flesh anymore, but water. Then he was gone too, soaked into the floorboards without a trace. Lily and I decided to make one final attempt to call for help. The radio still hissed with static, but beneath the noise, I could hear faint transmissions, weather alerts, rescue signals. I thought maybe someone was out there. We adjusted the dial slowly, desperately. That's when the static cleared, and a voice came through, my own voice. "If you're hearing this," it said, "it's already too late." I dropped the receiver. The broadcast continued, describing everything that had happened, word for word. The knocks, the hatch, the woman in the rain. But the last part was new. When you tell this story, she listens. She finds new listeners. The thunder rolled, closer than ever. Lily covered her ears, whispering that we shouldn't speak anymore. That maybe silence was the only way to survive. But the rain had other ideas. The cabin began to groan. Water seeped from the walls in thick streams, pooling around our feet. I could hear voices in it now, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, crying, whispering, begging. Faces formed in the puddles, flickering like reflections in glass. I screamed for them to stop, but the storm only grew louder. Then the radio spoke one last time. "You opened the door. You told the story." I don't remember much after that. I remember Lily running toward the hatch, screaming something I couldn't understand. I remember thunder tearing through the sky like a scream. And then, nothing. They found me 2 days later, sitting on the cabin porch in the sunlight, though the inside of the house was bone dry. No sign of Lily, Jonah, or Carter. Just water stains everywhere, on the ceiling, the walls, the floor. The sheriff said it hadn't rained there in a week. Sometimes, when it's quiet and the night feels heavy, I still turn on the radio just to listen to the static. And sometimes, between the cracks of noise, I hear it again, my own voice, telling the story you're hearing now. If it's raining where you are, don't look at the window, because she listens.